My name is Storm Nelson. I'm the feedback fella. I enjoyed your set a lot. I really like that Ben Wendell tune. It's a favorite of mine. It's a good choice. I hadn't heard anything like that today. You guys are, so like a few comments, instrument specific, and a couple program specific, I guess. But I also just wanted to talk a little bit about some like just general ideas around improvisation that I thought might be interesting to consider. Programming wise, I kind of wanted to hear like that tune, the Wendell. It was actually kind of a nice way to end the day. It's my last one of these. Sort of like a mellow, nice, relaxing fade out. But I felt like there was a kind of a continuity of energy that kind of like sort of sloped downward in a way that that made it feel a little like a little bit drawn out. I don't know, like everybody was soloing at every tune, and the solos were all really good, so it wasn't a problem. Had they not have been, I felt like it would have been just a little bit kind of drawn out in terms of like the arrangement. Most folks soloing on every tune. I think the variety was achieved by, like the instrumentation. I like that you guys were playing different axes. Clarinet is like, it's so nice actually. It's like my favorite instrument. It sounds so good. Nobody ever plays it. And a really nice touch on the piano. And like in general, you guys are really, you obviously have a sort of a comfort with each other, both in terms of, it seems to me like a mutual appreciation for the music, but also like just as improvisers, you seem to feel comfortable talking to each other in that way, right? Like, do you guys play together a lot, or just in the context of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Good. I think my main comment is I just wanted everybody to like dig in a little bit more. I've been using this metaphor a lot today, and I think it's just, man, like, how could you possibly play music optimally with like a light like this, and on stage? It's just the context is really difficult to play like, not even optimally, but like just like freely and comfortably, and in the way that you would if you guys were just hanging out. But I think that's like that extra 1,000 RPM, that you have in you that you just like don't necessarily think to push. I'm noticing after like all the bands today, that's kind of like I was hearing in you guys, that is like, it's totally there with you. Every one of you I feel like could have pushed a little bit harder, but you're like, you're literally being judged, like, which is, don't worry, like it's mostly not going to be that way. But just do that anyway. Like regardless of what you kind of want to like make your relationship to music kind of work for you. Like you're not. When you're at this stage, there's a tendency. You're learning and you're like soaking up as much information as possible. But there's a tendency, and one in my view, that can be a little dangerous, to kind of feel like you're in some sort of almost like a military kind of content where there's a way to do it, and there's a sort of a hierarchy of expertise that kind of like cascades down to you, and then you sort of like raise yourself in the ranks, and to the point where you have some sort of authority to play how you actually want to play and be able to back that up like intellectually and creatively and stuff. I think it's the reverse. You want to like kind of reverse engineer that, where like right off the bat you want to think. You want to soak up as much knowledge as possible, and be under no delusions that you have nothing to learn or anything like that. But the idea that like you guys are musicians, and jazz musicians, it's this incredibly awesome thing you get to spend your life trying to get good at, and you want to have this. You want to start cultivating this personal relationship with it now. I'm not saying you haven't, and you're not thinking about this necessarily, but it just is worth maybe even just reiterating, like, this is there's a sovereignty to your relationship to music that is like, it is just yours, so you can do whatever you want with this. Again, you learn as much as possible, but you take that in and you process it through a filter of sort of like, it's been a long day, your own sort of values around what you're trying to express, So like, like when you guys improvise together, there's a there's conversation happening, and like, you know, it has all the qualities of any other productive conversation, right? Like there's empathy, and there's compassion, and there's trust, and there's listening, and there's, you know, learning, and all of the things that make, like, you know, coexisting with one another worthwhile in the first place. You know, so you want to just carve out a sort of a sacred space in your musical attention for those elements, while at the same time just soaking up as much as possible. So that's my sort of like musical existential speech. As far as like just the more practical technical elements, drums were like super solid. You know, I mean, I feel like there was a lot of support. Right? You guys all seemed very comfortable with the rhythm section's ability to give you the platform you need to do your solos and melodies and everything. There's kind of like a bedrock concept to a rhythm section that I think you want to think about like like I was noticing with a couple of your solos, and what I'm about to say applies to all elements of music, rhythmically, harmonically, and melodically especially. I think it would be hard for me to hear what you were trying to say without the support of the rhythm section with the piano. And that's like kind of an unfair thing to say because, you know, as melodic instruments, it's very difficult to, and often not necessary to actually tell the whole melodic story or the harmonic story with, you know, on your own. But you kind of want to be able to, right? So, you know, if you're cruising through a tune and there's a part of it that you can kind of like just survive, you know, and then get back to the part you feel comfortable with, it's really important to like look at that and figure out what, you know, like slow the whole tune down to that one spot that you can't really do, right? Or maybe you can make the changes, but you're not really playing, like you don't feel like you're saying anything, you know. And that's kind of where the whole tune lives for a while until you know, and then you rise up like, you know, all boats, right? There were times in all three of your solos where I felt like, man, you know, if you didn't have a solid time coming from the drums and such unambiguous harmonic support coming from the bass and piano, that it would feel fairly ambiguous. And again, I'm being hard on you because this is, you know, you're counting on that support, and you should. But one exercise you can do is to just actually like play duos, just like strip out all of the predictability in your roles, you know. So like you could do duos like a cascading effect, like just the two of you, like you do on a blues or something. Then the two of you, and then you two, and you two, and you two, and then you two. And by doing that, you are forced to both like really solidify your own sense of time and form, right? Because there's no drummer or bass player backing you up necessarily, but also you're forced to play differently, more creatively, and more sort of like you need to summon the ingenuity to figure out how to support the tune without all of the, you know, normal levers that one pulls when they do this, you know, like having a rhythm section. So it forces you to get really creative about what the heck you're going to do to be able to pull it off. And we don't have a ton of time to like go through. I mean, if we had an hour, we would just do this. But just like try it. You know, just get in your band room and just pick a tune and do the extra 1,000 RPM. You know, and work on building a sort of a melodic, like a narrative arc to your solo, right? So that there's sort of like a story being told, you know, beginning, middle, end. A resolution that feels like it relates to the other parts of the solo. I'm not saying this wasn't done, but just be really conscious of it. And then, you know, like it is such a liberating thing to not need any other musician to be able to make what you're playing make sense, you know? So like being able to do it kind of all on your own, it's not that that's how you always want to play, but it is this kind of bedrock foundation to when you get back to your band, you're going to be so much stronger because you just have this new confidence in this. Basically, like it takes care of all the stuff that you can just put it aside and actually you have more mind share to just focus on the stuff that matters. Like, what are you trying to say? You know, your story, your tone, your interaction and exchange with other musicians, with the other musicians in the band. So I would suggest that exercise. I would suggest watching out for rushing, all three of you guys, a little bit. Time was fine, you know, but it got a little, which was interesting because it was a fairly like subdued. I mean, it's not the right word, but it's like mellow, you know. But there were still points. I noticed it was like the rushing was kind of connected to the dynamic gains, you know. So when things got, each of you in your solo, I think you have a habit of like, when you kind of start to push, tempo pushes a bit too. And that's actually okay if like the whole band does it with you. Like you listen to like those early Miles Quintet recordings, they kind of do all rush together. And it's not like I wouldn't take that case to trial, you know, but it just sounds great. So it's fine. But what was happening here was just that there was an elasticity to the time that wasn't happening with the whole band. Like there was kind of like a rigidity to the time in the rhythm section, as there should be, and an elasticity in other parts that kind of like created this. Well, it just kind of pulled it apart a little bit. So just be mindful of that. I think that's all I have for you guys. I just like kind of went off on a thing for a long time. Any questions about anything I mentioned just now? Yeah.
Can you explain the exercise again?
Yeah. So it's simpler than it sounds. You just like say you're in like a wagon train formation or whatever. You just go two at a time. So like in terms of soloing. So like you guys would start soloing, you'd support, right, just for a chorus or 2 choruses or 10 choruses, whatever. And then you move on to U2, you know? Think of it, what's that game? Leapfrog, sort of. Except not really, because the frog that's being leaped over is soloing. Okay, forget that. Use a better metaphor, I'll find it. Come back to me. No. Yeah, so U2 and then U2, so like you support him, you would support him, piano would support tenor, bass would support piano, drums would support bass, tenor would support drums, crazy as that sounds, right? Like it gets you out of this world of like, okay, well this is my axe, this is my role, I know what I need to be good at, I know what I can kind of ignore because it's not really my job, like all of it's your job, and it's really hard. It's really hard to keep the form. It's really hard to not rush or drag, particularly drag. It's really hard to come up with musical ideas that make any sense given what you're missing, given the harmonic context from the piano, given the limitations of your instrument. Like if you're an alto backing up a trumpet, it's hard, you think, okay, well, what's backup? It's like bass, maybe piano. How do I do that on an alto with a range higher than what I'm supporting? You just do it, you figure it out, and that kind of, it's so in that way it's like a creativity exercise too. But yeah, guys, it sounds great. Really enjoyed it, and it was like I said, it was a really nice way to kind of end the day. I have some prizes here for you. They're really cool. Sell them. I love your piano sound. Just for the student bow tie, which is deserves a presence, and so this is really nice. And you, sir, I definitely need to give you one of these. Thank you. So thank you all so much. I appreciate having the opportunity to hear you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.